Madam
into things they
Secretary,
were never intended.
These funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members.
Absolutely, and the Biden administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal criminals
We're
that took
talking,
the life
Madam
of
Chair,
Laken
about
Riley.
$100 billion. It is not credible to me that all the recipients
who have died
of that,
and lost their children
Madam
because of this
Secretary,
situation.
it is not credible. Madam Secretary, as Senator Murphy mentioned in his opening statement, Secretary Noem, under your leadership, we have seen you ignore our appropriation laws, our Constitution, common sense, and even basic humanity. And like a lot of Americans, I really have been horrified by the lawlessness and incompetence and cruelty that we have all witnessed. And for all the talk about going after criminals, you have sidetracked DHS staff who are investigating drug dealers, terrorists, human traffickers. And rather than photo ops, we need more of your focus on providing basic diligence, because your crackdown has roped in American citizens and people who are here legally with no criminal record. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether that was right or wrong. I know it's wrong. The world knows it's wrong. And I think the first thing that history is going to say about your leadership is that you were responsible for many of these travesties. So I'm deeply concerned. You've deported a 4-year-old U.S. citizen with cancer. You've disappeared people to a notorious prison in El Salvador. And you have spent $100 million in taxpayer dollars to air TV ads thanking President Trump. That is really reckless. It's unacceptable, and in my opinion, can't continue. The American people are paying for this with our taxpayer dollars and with their most basic rights. Now, in the last 3 months, you have frozen or canceled over $100 billion in funding that was approved by Congress, bipartisan. We are talking about everything from disaster relief to grants that keep people safe. But when my staff has requested information on the status of this unacceptable holdup, the department failed to provide any acceptable justification. This illegal freeze, and it is illegal, is taking a real toll on communities who are waiting on the investments that Congress has delivered. So will you commit to immediately unpausing these funds?
Well, Senator, thank you for covering a lot of topics there. Let me touch on a few of those right away.
Well,
what the Trump administration is doing is enforcing the law for the first time. Under the Biden administration,
I'm asking you about the funds.
Illegal aliens were prioritized over American citizens. Now the scales of justice have been leveled, and
Madam
no one
Chair,
is treated better than anyone else.
I asked you a
Citizens are treated the same,
Madam
and these
Secretary,
illegal
I
aliens
know your
and criminals
answer.
are being
I heard
deported.
it previously. I'm asking you a specific
The grants
question.
that you are referencing,
Correct.
The grants that you are referencing have been paused and reevaluated to make sure that they are truly being spent in the way to which they were appropriated.
Well,
many of these grants were being diverted
Madam
into things they
Secretary,
were never intended.
These funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members.
Absolutely, and the Biden administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal criminals that took the life of Laken Riley.
About $100 billion. It is not credible to me that all the recipients
who have died
of that,
and lost their children.
Madam Secretary, it is not credible. Madam Chair, it is not credible that $100 billion is used to break the law. That just cannot be true. And let me change this a little bit. On the other hand, I am very concerned that DHS is now dramatically overspending funding that Congress has not provided. If you were a CEO doing that, I don't think you'd be in your job long. We need accountability and we need answers. And that includes informative responses to oversight questions sent to the department over the last 3 months. I am ranking member on this committee. I have worked with every member of this committee. We take our responsibility serious to fund your department and others. We need to have answers. We need to have accountability. And we need to make sure you're not overspending money that you were not allocated.
Well, thank you for that question. I will be very clear in the fact. Do you want me to respond?
Well, you can.
Well, I've worked many jobs in my life, but I also have been a CEO. I've run businesses. I've been a governor.
Your credentials. I'm questioning your spending.
We are prioritizing where our security needs are in this country, and we are hoping that this body will agree that reconciliation is necessary to address the things that have been neglected in this country for too long, that we have the technology upgrades, the manpower upgrades that are necessary. So the $170 billion request for the Department of Homeland Security is incredibly important to make sure we have the tools that we need.
Additional questions. The fact is that you've not been given this funding. saying that it's going to come in reconciliation that has not passed is not an acceptable answer. I did want to ask about FEMA and disaster relief. This is really important. A lot of disaster relief has been politicized. You've endorsed eliminating FEMA outright. We have seen an upheaval at FEMA that is going to put lives in jeopardy. 1 in 5 FEMA employees have been pushed out, taking this administration's so-called buyout offer. We are losing indispensable staff just weeks away from fire and hurricane season. And over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants are still being held up. DHS is making it a lot harder to qualify for relief, something people in my home state of Washington are experiencing firsthand. Multiple requests from governors have been rejected in recent weeks, including a request from our state. And we haven't been given any response about this, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, has President Trump directed you to prioritize funding for Republican states?
Absolutely not.
Have you directed your staff to prioritize funding to Republican-led states over Democratic
Absolutely
states?
not. There is, under this administration, there will not be any politicization of support, relief, FEMA assistance, or grants given based on politics.
Well,
every single person will be treated the same. It will be very different than the Biden
Madam Secretary, there's a clear trend of Republican-led states getting very fast responses and funding. Democrat-led states are being forced to wait. We have never treated FEMA as a partisan issue in this country. Thank you.
What we just witnessed in that exchange between Senator Patty Murray and Secretary Kristi Noem was more than just political sparring. This wasn't just one lawmaker grueling an administration official. It was a direct confrontation about how government decisions are reshaping the lives of everyday Americans. Murray wasn't simply challenging the numbers. She was exposing what happens when federal power is used in ways that many believe undermine the law, common sense, and basic humanity. Think about what's at stake here. Murray points to frozen disaster relief funds, over $100 billion that Congress had already approved on a bipartisan basis. This isn't partisan wish list spending. These are funds meant to rebuild communities after fires, floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes. When those dollars are frozen, it doesn't just delay paperwork. It leaves real families without the resources they need to put their lives back together. Imagine being a town waiting for FEMA support after a wildfire, only to be told the money is paused indefinitely while leaders argue in Washington. That's what Murray is warning about, the human cost of bureaucratic and political games. And then there's immigration. Murray accused Noem of weaponizing DHS resources, shifting them away from pursuing actual criminals, like drug traffickers and terrorists, and instead pulling in people with no records, sometimes even U.S. citizens. She referenced shocking cases like the deportation of a 4-year-old American child battling cancer. Whether you agree or disagree with Murray politically, that example hits hard. It forces us to ask, what does law and order really mean if it sweeps up the innocent and vulnerable alongside criminals? And more importantly, is that making America safer or just creating more chaos and cruelty? When Noem pushed back, she framed it as correcting what she claimed was a bias under the Biden administration, saying resources previously went to so-called illegal aliens over American citizens. But Murray called that explanation flat out not credible, especially when Noem suggested $100 billion in relief funding was being misused to house illegal criminals. That's an extraordinary claim, one Murray made clear doesn't match the bipartisan intent of Congress when those dollars were passed. This clash highlights a bigger issue, accountability. In our system, Congress holds the power of the purse. Agencies can't just freeze, redirect, or overspend taxpayer money however they see fit. Murray is reminding us that if DHS or any agency starts treating congressional funding as optional, that undermines not only disaster relief, but the very checks and balances that keep government from sliding into executive overreach. And then comes the political angle Murray didn't shy away from. Are Republican-led states being prioritized for relief while Democratic states are left waiting? Noem denied it, but Murray pointed to a visible trend. If true, it would mean Americans' access to disaster recovery depends not on their need, but on their governor's party affiliation. That would be a dangerous precedent, turning life-saving aid into a political bargaining chip. So what should we take away from this? First, this isn't just about Washington drama. The decisions being made here ripple out to families trying to rebuild after disasters, communities waiting for grants to keep infrastructure safe, and immigrants, some even U.S. citizens, who are being pulled into the machinery of a crackdown that may not distinguish between criminals and the innocent. Second, it's a reminder that accountability and transparency matter. No democracy can function if massive sums of taxpayer dollars are frozen without justification, or if spending is stretched far beyond what Congress approved. And finally, it's about us. These hearings aren't just political theater. They're windows into how power is being used and sometimes abused in our name. That's why it's so important to stay informed, to look beyond the talking points, and to demand accountability no matter who's in charge. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who cares about government accountability, and subscribe for more deep dives that cut through the noise. Because the more we understand how these decisions are being made, the better equipped we are to hold leaders accountable.